Welcome, you're on the Fringe show. I'm your host, Tatiana Zalan, and I go live every Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. The Fringe helps you to navigate the rapidly changing world and increase the odds of your success. Here we discuss technology, startups, mental models of successful people, entrepreneurship, so that you too can take advantage of the opportunities in the new digital world. Today is episode number 41. And the tagline for this episode is "Events like this happen once in a century." In this particular show, I'm focusing on slightly different things. I'm focusing on how and why we're transitioning to an entirely new economic order and what all of us can do to navigate in these turbulent times. So you can call it mental models, but I would rather call it sort of concepts, ideas, insights that are coming from kind of a different, slightly different perspective. And hopefully it will help you to do well, to navigate this new, changing, turbulent, uncertain environment a little bit more successfully. In this show, I'm also doing something different in the sense that I'm drawing on the ideas of three Russian scientists. And I think it's important from time to time to have a very different cultural code, a different perspective from the one that we have in the West. And I've picked up three scientists, they're all PhDs and very reputable people, who bring very different perspectives, different level perspectives to this issue. What is the change that we're living through and how to navigate this change? Geopolitical, and here I'm drawing on the work of Sergey Glaziev. Then socioeconomic. I'm drawing on the work of Andrei Fursov. And finally, a human kind of individual at the interaction of human and technology, and that's Dr. Ina Muhina. A usual disclaimer here, this is not investment advice, this is not any kind of financial advice, although I will be talking a little bit where are the areas that we can invest our money, but also our efforts. It's for informational and educational reasons only. And I also want to say that my views, the views that I express in this video are my own, and this has nothing to do with the organizations that I either work for or help with, like the startups that I advise. So we'll start with Sergey Glaziev and what his ideas, how his ideas help us to understand the current world. So who is Sergey Glaziev, Dr. Sergey Glaziev? He's a Russian politician and economist. He's a member of the National Financial Council of the Bank of Russia, and he's also a full member of the Russian Academy of Sciences. He was in various political roles, and as of now, as of 2021, really last year, he's become the Commissioner for Integration and Macroeconomics within the Eurasian Economic Commission. And that's the executive body of the Eurasian Economic Union. That's a regional agglomeration of different nations that are looking towards pulling together, integrating their financial, monetary, and economic trade systems. That's Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia, so 5 members at the moment. Sergey Glaziev is an author of many books, and some of them translated in English. He also writes articles in English, and I'm currently reading his book, which is called The Last World War. And if you do want to have a very deep insight into what's going on between Russia and Ukraine right now, and well, that's probably the best explanation of why this conflict is happening. And mind you, this book was written in 2016, and he predicted what's going to happen, almost mot à mot, as they say in French. Now, I'm drawing on his recent interview in Business Gazeta, and that's, by the way, has been translated into Russian, and into English. Of course, it was in Russian, but I will show the link to that and then post the link to this very interview in English at the bottom of the video. There are a couple of, there are not a couple, but maybe 4 ideas that I would really want you to pay attention to. And the first idea which is not really a surprise to anyone who is following what's going in the world. What he's saying that it's on the periphery, a new world economic order has been formed. It's based on flexible management models and network organization of production, where the state works as an integrator, combining the interests of various social groups around achieving one goal, raising public welfare. The most impressive example, according to Glaziev, is of such an economy, such an integrated nation is China, which has 3 times faster the growth rate of the American economy for more than 30 years. And at the moment, China already surpasses the US in terms of output, exports, and exports of high-tech goods and growth rate. Later he will touch upon what are the ideological underpinnings of this, but he continues by saying that it's already obvious to everyone that the pace of global economic development is currently shifting to Asia, China, India, countries like that already produce more products than the United States and the European Union taken together. If we add to that Japan and Korea, where the management system is pretty similar and in its principles of integrating society around the goal of improving public welfare, or we can say that today the new world economic order already dominates the world, and the center of reproduction of the world economy has moved to Southeast Asia. By the way, this is this view of a multipolar world and the end of the unipolar world is kind of not new. Even I, in my work, when I was doing my PhD and later on in my life, in my studies and academic work, when I was looking at the regional integration and global integration of nations, it was very, very clear, both at the macroeconomic level, but also the firm level, that the world is really regional. It's not not as much integrated as everybody would tend to think. And even at the level of the firm, most firms are not global. Transnational corporations are not global firms. There are very, very few of them who are truly and ultimately global. And this is also an idea that was proposed by McKinsey many years ago, that the center of gravity of economic power is being transitioned from the old world to Southeast Asia or to Eurasia, however you want to classify it. And then he's kind of contrasting this new ideology with the ideology of the old world, as he calls it. The old world is based really on post-humanoid state of humanity. And in contrast to this post-humanism of the West, and by the way, many analysts call it transhumanist, not just post-humanist, the core countries of the New World Economic Order are characterized by socialist ideology, surprisingly, although with respect of private interests, protection of private property, and the use of market mechanisms. In China, India, Japan, and Korea, socialist ideology, he says, or rather a mixture of social ideology, national interests, and market competition dominates. It is this mixture, he says, that forms a fundamentally new power and political elite focused on economic development and the growth of the welfare of nations. So that's how he sees the world kind of migrating from unipolar to multipolar world, and the ideology that are really underpinning this world. And another idea of his is, that the old financial and monetary system are also collapsing, and it's literally on its last legs. And he says here that after the US dollars that no one needs are sent back to America from Asian countries, the collapse of the global monetary and financial system based on dollars and euros is inevitable. Leading countries are switching to national currencies, and the euro and dollar are no longer foreign exchange reserves. Then he continues really saying that, we really don't need or won't need American and European banks. A new payment system based on modern digital technologies, with the blockchain is developing in the world, where banks are losing their importance. Classical capitalism based on private banks is a thing of the past. International law is being restored. All key international relations, including the issue of world currency circulation, are beginning to be formed on the basis of contracts. At the same time, the importance of national sovereignty is being restored because sovereign countries are coming to an agreement. And he also details, or rather not details, but gives a bit of an overview what the new financial system or monetary system is going to look like in this region, in Eurasia, and maybe even further in Southeast Asia, generally speaking. One of the things he's saying is that, we really, all countries that participate in this particular alliance will have a new settlement currency, and this settlement currency will be granted the right to have the national currency. It will be a basket of currencies, in other words, and as the common currency will be formed around an index, or as an index, and the weighted average component of national currencies that are included in the basket. It's in many ways it's similar to what we now have with the International Monetary Fund and special drawing rights. But there is one big but. It's not just the index, the currency index, but it's also a basket of exchange traded commodities, not only gold, he says, but also oil, metal, grain, and water, a sort of a commodity bundle, which according to our estimates, their estimates, should include about 20 products. So it's going to be a new monetary system, and this type of a monetary system has been proposed already about 10 years ago. So they were at this Eurasian Economic Union. They were working on it for quite some time, and the actual design will be clear in the nearest future. So another thing that he's kind of saying about new reserve currency is that the ruble could become a reserve currency along with the yuan and the rupee, and it would be possible to switch to a multi-currency system based on national currency. He expects that it's not only these 5 countries that are now members of the Eurasian Economic Union, but also China, India, Japan, Korea, and Iran might be part of this new system, new monetary system, based on an index, synthetic index, but also on a basket of popular traded currencies. So that's his view of the world, very much, as you can see, geopolitical. Now let's get down to finer grained level of analysis, which is Andrei Fursov. Who is Andrei Fursov? Dr. Andrei Fursov is a historian, political economist, author of many books. Many of them are translated into English. He's got academic experience in the West. He's taught there at the universities, and now he's head of the Institute of the Strategic Analysis Systems. He likes to draw on another historian, Fernand Braudel. Fernand Braudel is a famous French historian who studied, history, and also, but most importantly, these moments of what he calls historical rupture or historical discontinuity. These events happen. Andrei Fursov is saying what we're seeing now, that what will happen in the next 20 to 30 years will determine what will happen in the next 200 to 300 years. As Fernand Braudel would have said, it's a new deck of cards that's being dealt at the moment, and it's like dusk before dawn. We're still in the dusk moment of that, at least according to Fursov. There is a great reset, according to him, but not in the sense that the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab assert or describing, but there is no turning back, according to him. The world is very similar to Glaziev. He sees the world as being split into macro zones, and that's what is leading to chaos and turbulence at this very moment. And one of the manifestations of that was, of course, Brexit. Forsow is a great economic historian, as he traces how capitalism in particular developed. And according to him, capitalism has exhausted its economic dynamism at the end of the 19th century. And the strategy, or the things, the events that's unfolding today was actually started in the late 60s. Capitalism, what happened in the late 60s, capitalism actually stalled in the late 60s. There is a very interesting website that I sometimes visit. It's called WTF Happened in 1971. It's full of all sorts of figures and numbers and graphs. And what you can really see, and there's one graph that really matters and really says it all, that as the productivity in the US, which was, of course, the strongest economy at the time, the productivity grew, the GDP, real GDP grew, but the median wage of male workers in the US didn't really budge at all. And that's a very, very revealing graph, all you need to know. There was certainly a period of, they were coming in the 60s, or we as a society were coming to a period of economic crisis. And there was a question that was facing the elite, so-called back then. Well, what's the solution to avoid economic crisis and any possible revolutions? The 1960s, according to Forsow, was really a fantastic time. It seemed that the mankind was already on its way to a very bright future. After Gagarin went into space, which happened in 1961, these were the forecasts that people, not just in Russia, but in the West, they were making. 1971, flight to the moon. 1981, Venus. 91, flight to Mars. 2001, orbital space station. In 2011, that station will be on the moon. 2021, using Proton engine, we were supposed to fly to our nearest star, Alpha Centauri, and we were also meant to eradicate cancer, heart disease, and live to up to 150 years. Well, how much of this happened? It's interesting that the first half of the 20th century was actually earmarked by wonderful inventions. But the second part of the century, well, what did we have then? What do we have now? Yes, it's the cell phone, the internet, and the PC. In a way, if you think about it deeply, they are all tools of digital control. And now, on top of that, we have AIDS, we have COVID, we have space exploration, which is nowhere near where it could have been. Peter Thiel, interestingly enough, has a very a good saying that we wanted flying cars. Instead, we got 140 characters. He's, of course, referring to Twitter. The elites, or I prefer to call them Mr. Global, this organization, they decided to take the path of slowing down the scientific and technical progress in past 1960s. And so by 2008, at the time of the global financial crisis, it became very clear that the unipolar system could not work, and two centers of gravity were required. And there was a big 16-year plan, which didn't quite go as planned by Mr. Global. COVID was really a trigger for a revolutionary transition to a post-capitalist order, and that order goes now under different names. Some people call it surveillance capitalism, but it's, as we will see, it's not actually capitalism. We're living in a post-capitalism world. We're seeing a genesis of a new post-capitalist order, and the way it develops depends on us, the people. It may go the way of the Great Reset, as the World Economic Forum says, but it doesn't have to. And in fact, we hope it won't. And it's important to understand what the rules of the game are in this new system. Well, each socioeconomic system is based on different factors of production and object of appropriation. If, say, it's land that's been appropriated, clearly we're living in a feudalist society. But in the capitalist system, the most critical factors of production are capital and labor, of course, but now it's very different. The object of appropriation is no longer labor, it's information and kind of the spiritual sphere. What do we include in that domain? It's science, it's education, it's information, and most importantly, it's meaning formation. And control over these and the appropriation of the spiritual sphere, informational spiritual sphere, is what really this struggle is all about. It's not about ownership of labor anymore, it's power and control over that sphere. And because of that, because of what's happening, what we see now in the world is a struggle for traditional values. And Forsov makes this very interesting point that I kind of never thought about it, because I was just locked in my traditional thinking. And what he's saying is now we see this fight for traditional values, and it's not the fight of the old or traditions against the new. Because all these, the most important factors, immaterial, are spiritual, their values, their spiritual beliefs, their cultural memes, their goals. And so the struggle for these things is becoming the new struggle in the post-capitalist society. So these are the buds of the new order, in other words. And the task of Mr. Global, unfortunately, is to turn people into an atomized mass, which is easy to control, easy to manage, and particularly with the help of the new digital social media. This same French historian, Fernand Braudel, described the society in the 15th and 18th century as when the society was migrating from kind of slavery and feudalism into capitalism, as social hell. So that's how he described it. And the fact is that any young society, be it the British Empire or the USSR in the 20s and 30s, well, it was a social hell. Is it possible to escape this hell? Yes, and I will talk about that later on. But now let's turn our sights to Dr. Irina Muhina. She's got a PhD in artificial intelligence. She's a fintech expert with an extensive work experience in MNCs, particularly insurance and financial services, and mainly in Canada. So she's mainly worked in the West. She's also a host of a very popular blog. It's a Russian video blog. It's called AI for Housewives. But it would be interesting if you're a Russian speaker, not just for housewives, but actually anyone who wants to understand how digital technologies, how artificial intelligence work. She too sees the current times as the death of the speculative financial capitalism and transition to digital control. But what she's very careful about, and one of the reasons why I was attracted to her work, is that she's very balanced in how we can use digital technology. Yes, digital technology can be used as a appendix to humans, right? Well, humans or other humans can be an appendix to machines. I guess this is what I want to say. But also technology can be used as a tool for human development. She's very often in her work, she's referring to the sixth technological paradigm, which is a notion that's coming from Sergey Glaziev's work. And according to him, we're entering into a phase of growth of this sixth technological paradigm. And that's a bundle of different technologies, like any paradigm, bundle of information, communication, nano, bioengineering, and additive technologies. And it's growing at a very fast rate, at a rate of about 30% per year. And its individual elements may be growing at anything between 20 to 70% per year. So that's quite a new paradigm. That's what defines a new paradigm. And we reach maturity somewhere around 2040, maybe. A byproduct of the sixth technological paradigm is what Irina Muhina calls homo digital. And there are many advantages to being Homo digital, to use these digital technologies. For example, you can do things fast, you can do them efficiently, you can give, or rather have, immediate feedback. It's very, very interactive, not something that we had in the previous paradigms. It's also very attractive because finally, you can have decentralization of power. And I talk a lot about decentralization, generally speaking, in my shows, but this in particular is focusing on decentralization of power. And so people can become creators in a genuine sense. But unfortunately, many people are not ready yet, and they don't want accountability. But there are also a lot of negative things that are coming with this new technological or Homo digital new technological paradigm. If you look at the content of the big five, GAFAM plus Netflix, so that's big six, I guess we can call them, most of the content is really below the belt, as I call it. It's porn, and it's really turning human into a human being and a normal human into an animal. I've got some figures, just had a very quick search on the internet, what's been searched for on the internet, what kind of content. And this is a couple of numbers here, and that's happening every second, mind you. 28,000 plus users are watching pornography on the internet, and $3,000 or more than $3,000 is being spent on pornography on the internet, and that's every second. And all these digital technologies, that's the worst part of it, of course, but the least worst is that all these digital technologies impose a relaxed, comfortable milieu on pleasure-seeking users. And that makes people weak, undisciplined. They make them feel helpless, lacking confidence, the feeling of not being enough. I'm sure that you've seen people like that and you can associate with that. And yet all psychologists are telling us that there is nothing significant happens out of your comfort. You need to have growth, to have human development. You need to step out of your comfort zone. And another downside of all this Homo digital is virtualization of consciousness. And human being has been convinced for somehow, or maybe even brainwashed into believing that he or she cannot be a creator in the real world. That for some reason, this creation moment has to happen in virtual reality, in these things that are not really real. And many people have been convinced that there are no alternatives to the technological prison. And these are typically people who are left brain, or people who use logic more than senses. And they in particular cannot see the light. They cannot imagine that there could be an alternative. And I certainly come across people like that, right, left, and center. I just recently we had a conversation with a friend of ours in Melbourne, and to him, things like digital ID, QR codes, CBDCs, UBIs are kind of inevitable. And there is a sense of fatalism about that. And this really puzzles me, but apparently some people just don't see the alternative. And digitization, according to Muhina, can also be a force for good, for motivating oneself. For example, you can be part of different virtual groups. You can be connected on the basis of mutual interest and values. You can organize virtual meetups and conferences. We're all entering virtual lives, VR, and we shouldn't be scared of that. There is no escaping it. We need to be prepared, and we need to see the positives in all of that. In the domain of arts, she's saying, for example, there are creators who are already using digital technologies, and they humanize the digit, so to speak. They bring in their originality and uniqueness. And I'm particularly passionate about this topic myself, because I too work on a startup that tries to connect the old traditional values of fine art with digital technologies. So take all the best that we've had in the past and bring it with the help of technology into the future. And it's really up to us to maintain this right balance between the virtual and the real, and find constructive solutions worthy of human ingenuity. And on that note, well, what is the bottom line and what are the solutions? In Harry Potter, there is a line, dark times lie ahead of us, and there will be a time where we must choose between what is easy and what is right. I think the time to choose has come, and we need to choose what is right. And you, all of us, need to take a stand. Do we want to support the old world? Whatever the old world wants on you or imposes on you, do the opposite. They tell you you can't do something or you have no control over things, do it regardless. It's absolutely possible. Understand where, and that the second point for me is probably understand where real worth and real value is. And there is a little framework from Chris Martinson that helped me understand where the real value is, where the real wealth is being created. He has this pyramid of value, and at the bottom of this pyramid, 3 layers, very simple one. At the bottom of this pyramid is land. The secondary kind of layer of wealth is products of the land. It's fish, steel, coal, wheat, and things like that. Then there is tertiary wealth at the top of it, and it's paper-based abstractions. Now it's of course digital representations, digital abstractions. These are derivatives, stocks and bonds, things like that. And these are really the claim on the other 2 sources of wealth. Without primary wealth, there can be no secondary wealth. Without primary and secondary wealth, there can be tertiary wealth, or tertiary wealth will have no value at all. So in the material world that we live now, the real wealth is in land, commodities, precious metals, food, and food sources. This is not investment advice, but this is just common sense. Invest in those things. If you want food sufficiency, invest in communities, be supportive of each other, grow each other's food together. Glaziev, by the way, himself recommends to kind of invest in real things, things like real estate or gold. His advice is not to invest in euros and dollars because they're ceasing to be currency. They're obligations of countries that may or may not be fulfilled. If we go back to French historian Brodel, and who described this turbulent moments that sometimes happen in human history as social hell. How do we escape the social hell in the new society? Or if we want to put it in a lot more positive terms, well, what are the pillars of success in this society? Can we do it? And of course we do. And from reading a lot of things, from reflecting on that, from drawing on Glaziev, Fursov, Muhina, and others, of course, there are 5 pillars of success, at least to me, in this post-capitalist world. It's good education because it's an antidote to mind manipulation. It's traditional family values, community support, health, and of course it's self-awareness. On the point of traditional family, there was a stasis study that was quoted by Fursov that was done in the 70s. Stasi is the CIA kind of equivalent of intelligence agency in Germany at the time. And they did a study in the 70s which very clearly said that if a child is brought up to the age of 7, surrounded by love in a full family, well, there is no way that child, when he becomes an adult, can be manipulated or mind controlled. On the point of community support, we already see this happening. People are exiting the traditional system and the old system. They're creating enclaves. There is a book that's coming up by Balaji Srinivasan, I believe it's in July this year, where he will be talking about how to create a network state of citizens which are not united by geography, but a common set of values, and how this virtual world, as he says, then can be turned into a physical world. So I will be looking forward to that particular work. Muhin herself believes that self-awareness and an ability to be attuned to oneself, to be self-aware, to understand what's needed, is a distinguishing feature of an individual who will be able to step into this new world. And this individual will be able to self-actualize, and not even self-actualize, but rather fulfill the Creator's mission. And I believe that all of us have got a divine spark, and it's a matter of making it known or revealing it and fulfilling one's purpose in life. And this is very, very much possible and within our reach. One of the foundations of success in the new world. And finally, one point that I want to make, and it's really a promise to myself, which I'm making now very publicly. I'll stop spending time and thinking about the old world. It's gone. That's the reality. I can't do anything about it. I'd rather focus my attention on building a new one, the one I want to live in, by my rules, not by any rules that anybody else imposes on me. And I encourage you to do so as well. And that's particularly important if you have young children, because they're our future. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and got a couple of interesting perspectives and insights on what's going on and what we can do about it as humanity. So I'll see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. And now, some music.